Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great. Starting to get into the holiday spirit and all that good stuff. And in this video, I have a unbelievably wild story from Oklahoma about the Greys. So, if that sounds like your cup of tea, then definitely pull up a stump with me and let's dive into it. Thank you for watching. I just want to start off by saying that you can choose to believe this or not. I'm not role-playing. This story is set over a period of 20 years. So back then, I was living in a small rural area in Oklahoma between Tulsa and Bartlesville. The county has been experiencing weird sightings of black triangles and cloaked people walking down rural roads. Cows have been disappearing, and blood and organs are being found in the fields. And I lived on a ranch then, with livestock, and I was 14. I was chilling at the house at night. During the summer, I was playing Super Nintendo. This would have been early 1996, so the N64 was not released yet. Our game room was also a sunroom that overlooked the land, and in the distance, if it was clear and you could see, the Tulsa skyline was visible about 30 miles away. So I get up to go get an RC Cola. I walk into the sunroom, and I see what looks like people by our pool on the bottom of the hill. Mind you, our house was built on a hill to overlook our land. And I think, oh shit, my little brother's got out again, and he's trying to swim at night. I leave the sunroom, and I proceed to go out to the back deck. I start walking down the stairs to the pool at the bottom of the hill. I notice that these figures are small and skinnier than my brothers. I see a baseball bat on the staircase landing halfway down. I grab it. I feel my adrenaline pulsing. I'm walking toward the pool, which feels like forever. I try to say something to the figures. I barely let out a word. They hear me. They turn around and stare at me. They have large eyes and gray skin. I start to hear static in my head. It feels odd. I start counting them. There are 4. I try to raise my bat. My arms feel like they're jelly. I'm hearing what seems like distant whispers in my head. We are not here to hurt you unless you mess with us first. I'm starting to feel like I'm congested. I start slowly walking to like 60 feet to the pool. The bat is raised and I might be able to get a good swing on one of them maybe. I try to swing and I miss. I start feeling weak. I fall down and accept my fate. I hear footsteps on the concrete around the pool and I hear the gate move. I look around and they are walking away. I see the light from the TV in the sunroom. I see one of my younger brothers in his pajamas, lit up by the light from the TV. I sit there for a few minutes as I regain my strength. I slowly walk up to the house, and I feel warmth on my face. My nose is bleeding. I walk to the bathroom when I get to the house. So I'm standing in the mirror, washing my face off and contemplating waking up my dad and stepmom. My younger brother walks up behind me and says, "You saw them too?" That's why I draw the lines every evening now. A few months back, I was reading Hank the Cowdog, and I looked up, and one of them was staring at me from my window. I felt a loud buzzing in my head, then it just disappeared. I look at him, and the dots of all of his odd behavior are adding up in my head. My brother continues to say, "They mostly walk around outside the windows and try to peek into the windows. They know we're here, but they are trying not to mess with us." I ask him, "Does Dad and Sue know about this?" "No, I don't want to tell them. They might think that I'm crazy." I say, "Well, for now, let's keep this to ourselves." I go back to the sunroom and turn off the TV and run back to my room, freaked out. I lay in my bed all night until the sun rises. I'm unable to sleep. I'm still listening for movement outside. When my father comes in to wake me up, I tell him, "Dad, I want a rifle." His eyes light up. "What for?" "I just want to plank and walk the land with it." And he says, "Of course." So we go to the tractor supply store and we get a cheap SKS from a barrel and some ammo. Now I'm prepared for these guys. Weeks go by and nothing happens. So, like I said, a few weeks later, I was playing my new game Quake on DOS. The computer room is in front of the house, and the room is like a computer/informal dining area. There's a window, and it has some benches built right underneath of it. The sun is going down in the Oklahoma sky. My anxiety starts to set in. I draw the blinds, and I play about another hour or so, and I start feeling odd, and I have this weird feeling in my back. My back is to the window. I stop playing for a second, and I start listening to the sounds. I hear the DOS theme playing, and then I hear what sounds like movement in the bushes outside the window. I gather some bravery, and I peek behind the curtains. I see two large, all-black eyes staring at me. My panic mode is engaged. I run from the window while yelling. My dad gets up, and I hear him running. He comes into the room with a loaded 1911. He says, "What is it, son?" I said, "There's something outside." He walks out the front door, and I hear him yell, "Holy shit." He runs back in and locks all the doors and draws the blinds over the entire house. "Everyone, get into my office." We do, and my dad walks in a few minutes later with a few sleeping bags and a few rifles and some food. I hear him try to call his co-workers. My father is a deputy, and he tries to call my stepmom, who's out of town for a conference. He has no service. My dad comes in and rounds up all 5 of us, I have 4 brothers, and tells us that what is out there looks like a gray, and he begins to explain to us what that is. He tells us all to stay in the room all night. Dad randomly patrols the house. My brothers fall asleep, but I end up passing out around 1:30 after fighting it as long as I can. I wake up because I think I hear knocking on the window. I look around, and I see all of my family is asleep. Even Dad is asleep in the chair in front of the locked door. I think I'm hearing rain, so I assume it's rain on the windows, but it's like a knock, knock, knock. It's coming from the window. I look out, and I can see nothing. But then I hear cans from the direction of the garage. My dad wakes up, alert, locked and loaded. My brothers wake up crying. He says, "Oh, I forgot to lock the garage." My dad screams out. He hands me my SKS and he tells me that he will lead. We slowly walk the length of the house to the garage. We hear movement in there. It sounds like cans are being thrown about. Dad reaches for the door handle and quietly unlocks the door. I think, oh, here we go. He opens the door right as lightning flashes. The door swings open. The garage is lit up. The door is open. Dad turns on the lights. It seems that the wind blew the door open, and the wind was scattering the cans around the garage. And I think, oh, thank you. We go to close the door and look outside, and we see something run past the door about 100 feet away as another bolt of lightning flashes. I close the door and I tell my dad. I start hearing a soft buzzing. I start hearing slamming on the garage door. Then I hear my brothers screaming from across the house. Dad and I run toward them as we lock both garage doors. I run to the office. Something is slamming on the window. I tell everyone to get out, and we all run toward the master bath with a walk-in closet with all of our stuff. The banging goes on for another hour in various places throughout the outside of the house, doors, windows, and walls, until all we hear is the rain and distant thunder. Around 5 a.m., my dad and I start turning on all the lights in the house and all that we can outside. We patrol the house and wait until the sun rises fully. So when the sun rises, we peek outside and we see nothing there. It's a dreary morning. We walk the perimeter of the house and we see little footprints. And my dad has an old Polaroid camera. He takes some pictures and he prepares to cook breakfast. My brothers wake up still scared. We reassure them that it's okay. Dad tells them not to tell Mom and that we will make sure the house is safe. Fear consumes the house for the next few weeks, but nothing happens. School begins and all is well. So fast forward to when I was 16 and edgy. So I was 16, I was working on the property and feeding the cows. We have multiple cows that are out in the pasture, and it's about 10 a.m. I walk towards the cows with my SKS slung on my back, and I notice that they're standing by a creek bed, mooing like they're lamenting something. I walk toward the creek bed where the cows are standing, and it smells like a hospital and rotting flesh. There's 3 cows, mutilated, and a calf fetus, still with the umbilical cord attached, floating in the creek. I run back to the John Deere Gator, and I call my dad on the walkie-talkie, and I tell him to call the sheriff and to come here. Flash forward an hour. The deputies are taking pictures, and the coroner is looking confused. I hear a Crown Vic roll up, and a few guys in slacks and button-up shirts walk up, and they identify themselves as the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation. They start their investigation, and they call a college vet to come and pick up the bodies for this investigation. So they drive off with the cattle bodies, and we go on our way. That night, I have to stay up and patrol the property on an ATV to make sure that nothing goes wrong, while my dad stays at home by the phone in case I call for help on the walkie-talkie. So it's around 10 p.m. or so. I'm driving my ATV down a dirt road, and I hear a car rolling down. It's an all-black Crown Vic. As I drive by, I notice 2 men in all black in the front. They stare at me as I wave at them as I pass. I go about a mile down the dirt road, and I hear a buzz, just like the one that I heard 2 years before. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I see something slowly move across the sky and hover over a house, down a road, and then move on, and it shoots all the way up. I sit there in awe for a good 10 minutes, and I hear jets in the distance. 2 jets fly over me, probably from the Air National Guard base in Tulsa. They make 2 or 3 passes. I drive on, and for the rest of the night, I don't see or hear anything. I spend the rest of my weekend with no issues. I go to school on Monday, and everyone has seen the black triangle and knows what happened on our ranch at my school. People are saying it's a very common occurrence, but the Air Force and the feds are keeping it quiet. So fast forward another year. I'm 17, and I'm getting ready to graduate high school. I'm preparing to enter the Oklahoma National Guard. I'm still working on the ranch and keeping my eye out for odd things. It's a late one evening, and I am driving back in my beat-up 1986 Silverado with my girlfriend, who is the stereotypical 90s goth girl. I'm listening to Pantera on a back road in Oklahoma, being edgy and different. We stop on an isolated part of my family's ranch. We start a bonfire, and we pull out a 12-pack of Lone Star beer. We drink some beers, and we start to feel a little buzz. We bang a gong when we're getting it on, and then we look up at the stars while the fire dies down. I hear a buzzing, but I ignore it. My girlfriend says, "Hey, do you hear that?" I say, "Oh, I sure do." She looks at me. I hear it all the time at my house. I think it's just the electricity from the power lines. I think, oh, okay. The stars black out over us in the shape of a triangle. She's screaming and hurrying to put her clothes back on. I put my pants on, and we run to the cab of the truck. I struggle to start it. I crank it a few times, and it finally starts. We start hauling ass toward the road, shifting gears like a boss. I bust through a barbed wire fence and look in my rearview mirror. The triangle is slowly following us. So we're hauling ass down this country road, trying to get to the highway to be around other cars. We see a storm following behind the triangle. It's about a mile to the highway. My girlfriend is screaming at me to go faster, and not in a good way. It's raining so hard all of a sudden. I'm pushing my truck to its limit. I see this bridge that I have to cross. It's flooded. I tell my girlfriend to hang on, and I make a sharp left turn into a field and check my rearview mirror and see the triangle is still following us. I make a sharp turn right back onto the road, and I see the highway. I feel a sense of relief. We get on the highway and we're still speeding. I see a blue and red light on the other side of the highway. There's cars on the other side of the road that are stopped, and people are staring up in awe at this triangle. I cut through the median toward a few stopped sheriff cars. They are also in awe. The craft stops, and it hits a crazy amount of speed, and then flies off. The deputy looks at me and says, "Hey, you're the deputy's son, right?" And I say, "Sure am." And he says, "Was that thing chasing you?" I say, "Yes, sir." He said, "Holy shit, kid, from where?" I say, "Near Ramona." "That's like 6 miles, kid." I'm still in shock. My girlfriend is crying. I drop my girlfriend off at her house in the shadow of a mesa in a trailer park, a poor rural area. I drive home and my dad has been told that I was being chased. He listens and tells me that I did the right thing. I go to school the next day, and that's all anyone can talk about. I graduate high school and I go into the National Guard. So fast forward again to 2003 when I get home from Iraq and I'm going to college and working part-time as a corrections officer at the local jail. Once I get home from Iraq, the world is different. I feel different. I've killed people. I go to my part-time job at the sheriff's and I get moved from the jail to patrol, and I think that's a pretty good promotion. So I'm having a typical boring evening shift, sitting in my patrol car, listening to classic rock. It's Eric Clapton, if you were wondering. The dispatch calls, 843. We have a call about a person hanging around a ranch at etc. etc. I go to the call because I am Unit 843, and it's probably just a bored kid wandering someone's property. And once again, it starts to rain. I get to the residence, and I put on my rain jacket. This better be good, I say to myself. I walk to the house and I knock on the door. Sheriff's Department. The door cracks open. It's near the barn. It's a short little fella, probably a kid that's wandered onto my property. I think, okay, so it is an easy call. I'm hearing thunder in the distance, and I can hear some AC/DC coming from my car subtly in the background. I walk toward the barn, and my radio is starting to squeak. It's getting choppy. I think, oh great, the rain's taking out my radio, that's great. Then I hear footsteps in the barn. I say, "Hey kid, this is the sheriff's department. I'm gonna need you to come out and come with me so I can take you home." The walking stops. I say, "Hello? Kid, it's the sheriff's department." I walk around to the side, where I hear stepping, and I pull up my mag light because the sun is going down fast as the rain picks up. There's these huge, black eyes reflecting back at me. My eyes are watering and my head is buzzing. My radio is making this moaning sound. I hear it walk toward me. I see it walking toward me, and I pull out my 1911 out of the holster, and I pull the hammer back with all of my strength. The same voice from when I was a kid enters into my head. "You missed with the stick. You're going to miss with that." I put my head down. The buzzing stops. I look up, and nothing is there. I put the hammer back on my 1911, and my radio is back to its normal chatter. 843? 843, we have reports of a large triangle near your call. Are you okay? 843. I get on the radio. I'm okay. The dispatch is going nuts. They're telling me that they've called my number for the past 5 minutes. I tell them that my radio went out because of the storms. The dispatch cancels the officer non-responsive call. I hear like 5 patrol cars rolling down the road to my position with sirens and lights. I walk back to the house and tell the lady that it was just a scared deer, and from the front they could look like kids. All of my coworkers are worried as they turn around and drive back. It's then that I get another call. 843. We have a civil disturbance at, and they give me the address. I say I'll go to it. I'm driving the 7 miles to my next call. I hear various radio calls about the sighting of a black triangle and the focus on my call. I get to the call and it's a familiar place. It's where my girlfriend from high school lives with her parents. I knock on the door. I hear yelling. The door opens. It's her mom. Oh, hey. Someone put you in a deputy outfit, or did they think you were sane enough to be a cop? And I say, ma'am, I don't have time for this. She tells me that my ex is having violent fits and outbursts, and I walk toward her room in the trailer, and I hear yelling and screaming. I open the door, and I see her thrashing on the ground. I drop to my knees to try and calm her. She says, they know who you are. I say, who? They do. The things that we saw that night, the triangle, and they're trying to get you with me. I look at her mom, and she tells me she was diagnosed with bipolar depression last year. And I ask her, I say, what do you want me to do, ma'am? As I look at her. Take her to the hospital. Maybe a few weeks in a padded cell will help her. I called the dispatch and used the I have a 5150. It was just California police slang, but now it's just police slang. I handcuff her and I put her in the back of my squad car and begin to drive her to Bartlesville, which is the nearest city. She's talking to me and telling me that they know that my younger brothers are my weakness. My radio is going off with reports of multiple F-16s flying over the area and a black triangle showing up after they RTB and then they scramble them again. So I get to the hospital and I leave her there and I continue on with my shifts for the next few weeks. I get a phone call at 3 a.m. 4 weeks later. It's, hey, your ex hung herself in the hospital. She left a note saying that you were being watched and that they were after you. And everyone seems to just think it's the ramblings of a bipolar, depression, schizophrenia kind of deal. I don't, and I tell my father, and he looks at me. He says, son, they're here every night outside, and your stepmom is in denial. Dad is literally sleeping 4 hours a night and walking the house when he is up at night. My mom is taking Xanax and working her rounds at the local rural healthcare clinic like nothing is happening. So, fast forward 2 years, and I am finished with my associates, and I'm working full-time at the sheriff's department as a corporal. There's been no happenings lately. One day, during someone's shift, they call me and tell me that they found a girl that was missing, naked in the woods, rocking back and forth. She's been missing for 1 week, and she was found by a few hunters. The girl was talking about big eyes and gray men. The investigators are treating this as a sexual assault because they see signs of traumatic sexual activity and other bruises. They take her to the hospital, and Homeland Security took over a rape case and took us off the case, which isn't that common. Homeland Security goes to our headquarters and starts taking reports and evidence from every call about cattle mutilations and black triangles and odd sightings. Then, they tell us that any future calls, they need to be notified. A fight breaks out between the feds and the sheriff's deputies in Motor Pool. They keep screaming Patriot Act, as we fight, and one man actually pulls his sidearm on us to make us all stop. He says that if we continue, all of us will be stripped of our post certifications, and blacklisted from policing for the rest of our lives. I fall into a depression, and I drink about 8 to 12 cans of Lone Star every night. I become basically a functioning alcoholic. I work my shifts. All they are is meth heads and domestics. But one day, around 2007, I was working the night shift, and it was 1:30 at night, and I was chilling on a back road taking a piss, and I hear the piano exit of Layla playing over the radio. It's a nice clear Oklahoma night, so there's no worries. But I hear a thumping in the distance. I've heard this before. I'm digging deep into my memories. Thump, thump, thump. It's getting closer. That's a Black Hawk heli. I get in the car and turn off all the lights as it gets closer. The heli flies over. I leave off all my lights and I begin to follow it. I'm following the heli for about 20 minutes. Our beats are huge. The heli lands in a wooded opening near a nice new house. I think, what the hell's going on here? I see multiple black SUVs and a lone sheriff's car with the deputy sitting beside it, looking like he is being scolded by some Homeland uniformed officers. I turn on my driving lights and I wait for the deputy to pull out so I can talk to him. The deputy comes out and I wave him down and he tells me to follow him. We drive around for about 2 miles and make sure that we're not followed. He tells me that he got a phone call from our LT about a person peeping in the windows of a house and he went to investigate. He told me that he went to look and about 5 minutes later, some DHS guys rolled up and told him that he had no jurisdiction at this case and detained him for a while. I connected the dots in my mind. DHS is there in less than 5 minutes and uses a helicopter. They must have a place they operate from in the county, and they must be listening in on our calls. I finish my shift and I go to my father. I tell him what I think, and he says, "Yep, that's the issue. We are meddling in something and they don't want us to know what it is." I lay low for a few years, and I just be officer friendly. So again, fast forward to 2010. I met a woman and I married her. She works as a general surgeon in Tulsa. I am still bebopping around my sheriff job wearing my khaki and cowboy hat. It's a common deputy outfit in Oklahoma. I'm working my beat. It's raining, and I'm thinking about quitting this job and moving to Tulsa and working the urban beat. I'm sitting on a railroad track while In Bloom by Nirvana comes on. I think back to being a teenager, and I think of my girlfriend who killed herself and all the crazy moments. Dispatch to 843. This is 843. We have a missing child case and they give me the address. It's reports of a little girl following a fireball. It's around the 4th of July, and fireworks are shot off a lot in the country. I put my Crown Vic in drive and I make my way toward the address. I'm greeted by one of my younger brothers, who is now a deputy, and the parent. She is talking about how the whole house lit up and an orange ball shot through the house, and the daughter started to follow it, and she points in the general direction toward the forest. I look at my brother, and he looks at me, and he has a face that I have not seen in about 15 years. A face of fear. We tell her that we will go into the woods once another deputy comes and is able to stay with her in case the child comes back. A third deputy shows up, and me and my brother turn on our mag lights and walk into the forest. We walk about 300 feet into the forest and our radios go nuts, and my cell phone battery dies as I'm trying to make a call back to dispatch. I say, "Oh shit," as me and my brother go deeper into the forest. I start hearing, "Help." It sounds like it's echoing, and I whisper to my brother, "You hear that?" He says, "Yeah, it's not a voice, but it's in our heads. Help." It sounds like a distorted child's voice. Our flashlights die. My brother says, "Oh shit, these are fresh batteries." Then suddenly, our radios scream out, It blasts over the radio before it beeps that it's dead, and we hear it again. Help. We both sit in the forest and wait for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. I pull out my SIG 226. I whisper, let's move up. We move up about 200 feet, and we hear it again. But then we start to hear a soft buzzing. I hear actual crying about 500 feet to my front. Then I hear, help me, and it says my name. I look to my left and my brother is right beside me. I say, why did you call for help? He says, that wasn't me, but it said your name. And then we hear it again, my name. We continue moving. We're getting closer to the crying, and now we're right on top of it. The girl is in a dried creek bed. She's bloody and all cut up. I jump into the creek bed, and she whispers to me, they're watching us. And then my brother says, hey, something's up here with me. I say, run if you have to. And we hear the same, help me, again. I hear my bro start booking it back to the tree line, and in my head that buzzing comes back. I can't climb out of the creek bed because it's about 10 feet up. I walk with one hand holding my pistol, and the other holding on to the girl. We're hearing leaves move above the creek bed. I say, that you, bro? Silence. I start hearing a clicking noise. I hear something drop behind me. I turn around real fast, and it's a rock. I start booking it to a place where I can run up the creek bed. The clicking sounds are falling behind me. I start to hear running. I run about 500 feet down, and I run up the creek bed. I start running toward the tree line. An orange ball of light flies past me. I start to hear running towards me in front of me as I see 10 flashlights. I start running toward them, and I notice that there's 10 deputies with AR-15s. They say, come on. I'm running the fastest I've ever had in my life. I reach the line with the deputies with the AR-15s, and their lights start to fail, and their radios beep, and then the night goes dark, and a humming goes over us and blocks the stars. 6 orange balls fly up toward the craft, and it speeds away as 2 F-16s fly over as well. We all walk toward the squad cars and hear a helicopter on the horizon, and it flies over and places a spotlight on where we were, and 3 DHS SUVs pull up. They have those little radiation detectors, and they keep beeping when they scan us with them. And then they run toward the forest and begin looking. I go through SOP, and I make it back home at 8 a.m., and I crack open a nice cold RC Cola, and I rest, but only for a short time. For a bit it felt like my life was falling apart. My wife and I had 2 children, and she ended up leaving me for a banker in Oklahoma City. So in 2014, I was living in a nice trailer in the country on my family's ranch, and I was still working at the sheriff's department. So one night, I'm watching some shitty late-night variety show, and I hear a knocking on a window. I didn't hear anyone drive up, so I grab my gun. I check the window, and nothing is there. The power goes out, and I think, oh shit. I grabbed some Gen 3 NVGs from the Federal Police Aid Program. I kept them because we had no use for them. I put them on, my dark world turns green. I walk to my room and I put on boots and I find a can silencer for my SIG. I'm going to end this, I think to myself. I quietly make my way outside. It's eerily quiet. I check my perimeter. I change things up though, and I go the opposite way. I hear knock knock from the other side of my trailer. I make my way quietly toward the other side. I see a gray man trying to peek into my window. He yells, "Help me." The thing looks at me and screeches and starts to run off. I give chase, not thinking to fire at it. I'm full of anger. I've been screwed with my entire life for the past almost 20 years. This thing can run though. I speed up as I attempt to catch up to it. I yell out, I'm gonna kill you, you mother effer. The creature is running toward the ranch house. I see the outside lights of the house on the hill as it comes into view. It's odd that the house is without power. I'm running toward the creature, and all of a sudden, it runs under a security light, and it blinds me. I take off my NVGs to try and readjust, and I start to see spots in my vision. Vision comes back, and I'm looking at the pool. The creature is looking back at me. I feel my pockets, and I feel the baton. I flick it out, and walk toward the pool. I yell at it, "If I lay one lick on you, you better never come back." Those empty, soulless eyes just stare back at me, and I hear buzzing, and my nose begins to bleed. I extend the baton and walk toward the creature. I swing and land 2 on its head, and it lets out this blood-curdling scream. Then I kick it into the pool. I hear it struggling to keep above water as it breathes in and slowly swims toward the stairs. I walk over to the stairs, and I spit in its face. I land 1 good whack on its head again, and then I can feel a burning in my body, and I hear a buzzing. The lights go out, and I cannot move. 4 creatures show up and drag off the wounded one. The craft flies off, and I close my baton, and I hear my dad running down the steps. "Are you okay?" I say I am, but I'm exhausted. I walk home, and I sleep. So fast forward to 2016. I'm now married, and I'm still working at the sheriff's, but we've had no odd cases reported in about 2 years. So, that was pretty wild, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed the video, because I definitely did. Yeah, it was a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on there, ain't there? Anyways, I hope you did enjoy the video, and if you did, then like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching.